Imagine a fire so fast, so utterly devastating that it shatters hundreds of lives in just a matter of minutes. That's what happened at Karachi's Gul Plaza. It left behind a trail of destruction and a whole lot of deep, unanswered questions. Today, we're going to break down what happened. Let's start with a voice from the ground. This is Mohammed Ashraf. He's a shopkeeper who had just locked up his shop for the day. He gets a call about a fire, he rushes back, and his entire livelihood is just gone. His story is the story of hundreds of people that day, a sudden, total annihilation of everything they had worked for. Now I want you to hold on to this number, 42. That's how many hours after the fire started that smoke was still pouring out of the ruins of Gul Plaza. 42 hours. Think about that. It's this grim testament to just how intense this inferno was, and it's a symbol of the slow, agonizing wait for answers.
So picture this. It's almost 2 days later. The immediate chaos, the sirens, the screaming, that's all subsided. But for the people standing there, staring at the ruins, it was replaced by this heavy sense of disbelief and just total loss.
And this is where things get a little strange. You had officials on the news, right? They're saying the fire's under control, that the building is in a cooling phase. But for anyone actually standing there, watching thick, black smoke just billow out, well, the reality was obviously very different. The plaza was still burning from the inside out. So, the big question is, how on earth does a multi-story market, a solid building, get to this point? Well, according to the people who were there, the answer lies in an impossibly short amount of time. The timeline itself is just staggering. The spread was just terrifyingly fast. Okay, so at 5:15 p.m., a small fire kicks off in a flower shop. Just 15 minutes later, it's already leaped across lanes and it's swallowing everything. By 5:50, that shopkeeper, Mohammed Ashraf, he gets back after being gone for only 35 minutes. And an entire section of the market is just gone, wiped clean off the map. And this is just brilliant. A shopkeeper puts it into this devastatingly simple perspective that really captures the suspicion hanging over this whole tragedy. Paya, right? It's a traditional stew that's slow-cooked. It takes 40 minutes. So how could a huge, well-built market be destroyed faster than that? For a lot of people on the ground, the math just didn't add up. You know, as this fire is just tearing through the building with this unnatural speed, the focus very quickly shifted from property to people. A horrifying question started to bubble up. Who was still inside? And the answer? Well, it was shrouded in chaos and confusion. Right away, there was this massive gap in information. I mean, look at this. Official reports were initially saying around 65 people were missing. But the eyewitnesses, the workers, the families, the people actually there, they were telling a completely different story. They were claiming the number was way closer to 200, maybe even more, and that included women who were just there for some afternoon shopping. And while nobody knew the exact number of people still missing, the confirmed toll was already just heartbreaking. At least 6 people lost their lives. That includes a firefighter who died when part of the building collapsed on him. Others died from suffocation, from severe burns, and dozens more were rushed to hospitals totally unconscious from all the smoke. Meanwhile, outside the burning plaza, a whole different kind of hell was unfolding. Families and friends started gathering, just staring at the smoke, clinging to any little bit of hope. But their patience and their faith in the system was wearing thinner and thinner by the minute. You could hear it from the crowd, this one desperate plea over and over. Where is the government's helicopter? People on the ground, they felt like the response just wasn't enough. They felt like every second being wasted was another life slipping away. They were looking to the sky asking where the real help was. And, you know, as those hours just tick by, that fragile hope, it starts to sour. It turns into this grim despair. The pleas changed. It wasn't about rescue anymore. It was about recovery. They were begging, just get the bodies out. It was this awful acceptance that they were now waiting for the dead, not the living. And this is when you know people have hit their breaking point. The frustration just boiled over. The crowd, feeling completely helpless and ignored, started saying they'd just break through the barriers and go in themselves. It was this cry of pure desperation from people who felt like they had nothing left to lose. But here's the tragic, impossible reality of the situation. Getting inside was basically a suicide mission. A huge chunk of the plaza had already caved in. The rest of it was fractured, with these massive cracks running through the walls.
Firefighters and rescue teams physically couldn't go inside without risking the entire structure coming down on top of them.
So eventually the fire does go out. But for the shopkeepers, a new kind of fire, their anger and grief, was just starting to ignite. Their attention turned from the flames to the officials who were now showing up to stand on the ashes of their lives.
This quote right here, wow, it just says it all. You can feel the bitterness. The victims felt like politicians just showed up, made some empty promises for the cameras, what they called a lollipop, and then just left, leaving them to deal with the fallout all alone.
And let's be clear about what that fallout looked like. It was complete and total economic annihilation. We're not talking about big corporations here. These were small business owners who had poured their entire life savings into their shops. And to make it even worse, they had just stocked up with extra merchandise for the upcoming Ramadan season, which is one of their busiest times of the year. Billions of rupees worth of goods just turned to ash. For so many, this wasn't just losing a business, it was losing their ability to feed their families. Which brings us back to where this whole story gets really, really unsettling. For the people who lost everything, the idea that this was just some random fire, a tragic accident, it's just impossible for them to accept. This is the one thing you hear over and over again from the people on the ground. The speed, the intensity, the outcome, it all points to something more sinister. They are absolutely convinced this wasn't just a case of some faulty wiring or a kitchen fire getting out of hand. And look, the questions that are fueling this suspicion, they're stark and they're unavoidable. How does a structurally sound building burn to the ground in 35 minutes? The place had 24 different exits, so why were so many people trapped inside? And what was the real spark that started an inferno that seems to defy all logic? So, yeah, the smoke over Gul Plaza is gone now. But the questions? They're still hanging there, thicker than ever. For the hundreds of families whose lives were turned to ash in just over half an hour, the search for answers and for accountability is far, far from over.